Once upon a time, in a land not so far away, lived a beautiful and kind-hearted girl named Ella. After her beloved mother passed away, her father remarried a woman who was proud and haughty, with 2 daughters who were just like her. When Ella's father also passed away, her stepmother and stepsisters revealed their true, cruel nature. They took away all of Ella's beautiful dresses and forced her to wear old rags. Her days were filled with endless chores, from scrubbing the floors to cooking their meals. She slept on a hard straw bed in the attic, while her stepsisters had luxurious rooms. In the evenings, she would sit by the fireplace, and the cinders and ashes would often cling to her clothes. That's why her stepsisters mockingly called her Cinderella. Despite their cruelty, Ella remained kind and gentle, always remembering her mother's words. Have courage and be kind. One day, exciting news spread throughout the kingdom. The king was throwing a grand ball for his son. The prince and every eligible maiden in the land was invited. The stepsisters were ecstatic, chattering endlessly about the gowns they would wear and how they would capture the prince's heart. Cinderella, with a glimmer of hope, asked, "May I go to—" Her stepsisters burst into laughter. "You, in those filthy rags?" The prince would run away. Her stepmother, with a sly smile, said, "Well, if you can finish all your chores and find a suitable dress, then you may go." She then gave Cinderella an impossible list of tasks, knowing she could never finish in time. Cinderella worked tirelessly, her little friends the mice and birds helping her along the way. They even found scraps of silk and ribbon and cleverly mended an old gown of her mother's, turning it into something quite lovely. When Cinderella came downstairs, looking beautiful, her stepsisters were filled with envy. They flew into a rage, ripping her dress and tearing off the beads. "You can't go looking like that," they sneered, before leaving for the ball with their mother, leaving Cinderella heartbroken and alone. She ran to the garden, crying. "It's no use," she sobbed. "There's nothing left to believe in." Suddenly, a shimmering light appeared, and a gentle woman with a magic wand stood before her. "I am your fairy godmother," she said with a warm smile. "Now, dry your tears. You shall go to the ball." With a wave of her wand, the magic began. She turned a pumpkin into a magnificent golden carriage, the mice into majestic horses, a rat into a coachman, and lizards into footmen. Finally, she touched Cinderella's tattered dress, and it transformed into a breathtaking ball gown of sparkling silver and blue, with the most delicate glass slippers on her feet. "Oh, it's a dream come true!" Cinderella exclaimed. "But remember," her fairy godmother warned, "the magic will only last until midnight. At the stroke of 12, everything will turn back to what it was." Cinderella promised to remember, and with a heart full of joy, she rode off to the palace. When she entered the ballroom, everyone was captivated by her beauty and grace. The prince himself was enchanted. He didn't recognize the stepsisters, but he knew he had to dance with this mysterious, beautiful woman. They danced the night away, and Cinderella felt like she was floating on air. She was so happy, she almost forgot her fairy godmother's warning. Suddenly, the clock began to chime. "Midnight. I must go," she cried, pulling away from the prince and running down the grand staircase. In her haste, one of her glass slippers fell off. She didn't have time to retrieve it and quickly jumped into her carriage just as the final bell tolled. The prince, holding the tiny glass slipper, was determined to find the girl who had stolen his heart. The next day, a royal proclamation was issued. The prince would marry the maiden whose foot fit the glass slipper. The royal guards went from house to house. When they arrived at Cinderella's home, the stepsisters tried desperately to squeeze their large feet into the slipper, but it was no use. Just as the guards were about to leave, they noticed Cinderella quietly standing in the corner. "Let her try," the royal chamberlain insisted. The stepmother tried to object, but it was a royal command. Cinderella sat down, and the slipper slid onto her foot perfectly. Everyone gasped. Then, to their astonishment, Cinderella pulled the other glass slipper from her pocket. In that moment, her fairy godmother appeared and restored her beautiful gown. The stepmother and stepsisters were stunned into silence, finally realizing who she was. They begged for her forgiveness, and because Cinderella was so kind, she forgave them. Cinderella was taken to the palace, where the prince was overjoyed to be reunited with her. They were married soon after in a grand celebration and lived happily ever after, ruling the kingdom with kindness and courage. And that's the beautiful story of Cinderella. It teaches us that no matter how difficult things get, having courage and being kind will always lead you to your own happily ever after. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more magical tales. See you next time!